my child cannot speak Shona or Debele. She can understand it because of, being around people that speak it, but she could not speak the language.
Based in Harare, Zimbabwe, and we have a 21-year-old.
We have 3 daughters.
Yes. The first one's 21 years old.
Mm-hmm.
The second one is turning 17, and the little one's turning 4.
So, do any of them speak Shona?
Yeah, the first 2, they speak Shona fluently.
No. The little one doesn't.
A cat, and she lives in there, and she lives on. Okay. Kitty. Come on. Let's get your games. Okay, then we hold it tight.
I communicate in English. I think in English. I dream in English. I mean, what happens there?
Well, the sisters talk to her in English. She goes to school.
The environment is English speaking.
Yeah, I am the one who tries to speak to her at home in Shona. Even the maid speaks to her in English. I don't know why. I've never asked her to speak to her in English, but I guess she just goes with the flow.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say the problem is with the kids. I think the problem is with the parents.
I don't think there are many parents who go out of their way to teach their children language. I didn't teach my children language. They spoke the language that is spoken at home. In other words, spoke to the mother and spoke to the child. And somehow the child acquires the skills to speak the language.
Do I remember being taught how to speak Shona? No. It was the language of communication at home, wasn't it? What I remember learning was English. Shona was just part of life. But what I do remember being taught is English. And I learned that at 7. And I remember having great difficulty trying to remember the days of the week in sequence. But the funny thing is, in school, they prioritized teaching us Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but not Mvuro, Chipiri, Chitatu, China, Chishanu. Very few people can actually do it that way, even now. Counting Motsi, Piri, Tatu, China, Chishanu, very few people can actually count up to 10. And that surprised me. Worst months of the year. The mind boggles.
You know what? She knows some Shona words. And if you speak to her in Shona, she understands, she can hear me.
But responds in English.
And she does know a few Shona words. But I'm trying to speak to her in Shona just so she knows the language.
You know, one language, particularly their mother tongue, it constitutes who they are, their identity. It is what, defines them. It is what identifies you as an individual.
If you talk about language, you have to talk about the way we live, the type of houses we live in, the, what can I say? What are we trying to achieve? Everything is based, even the food we eat, okay? The food we eat is already being influenced by the Western world. We don't, our natural food, sadza and nyama and all those things, do you find them commonly on our tables? No, you don't. You're finding us going to eat meat and potatoes. We eat chicken in, we're eating Nando's, that's how everything, we've been influenced by the powerhouses of this world, which are the Western world.
Maybe also what...
You could ask the same question, why are we not eating more of our natural food? We're not.
Maybe also what Tejo was trying to say about our economy, it's also, these kids, they learn English. Most of the parents, well, if I can say in Zimbabwe, especially the kids that are coming from private schools, they're not looking at going to varsity in Zimbabwe. Most of them are going out of the country. And when they go out of the country, they need English. If they were going to go to university in Zimbabwe, then, there's no need for them not to want to learn Shona. But to them, they are saying, I'm going to leave the country anyway. I'm going to study in UK, in America, Australia. They need English. And most of them are not coming back to Zimbabwe. But like you said, France, They have all the university in France, in Germany. They are proud to be in their country because of their economy, and they are happy. They're not leaving their country. The only way they are leaving their country is if they're going on holiday. But our children are leaving the country and they're not coming back.
So maybe
Language is based on economics.
Yeah.
That is it. It's economics. French, when I was going to school, French was the language to learn. Now it's Chinese.
Well, I think if you don't teach a child their native language, the white people used to call it vernacular. And I think if you don't teach a child, you're robbing them a part of themselves. That's part of their identity. It's part of what makes them them. And as we all know, being a Zimba is unique. Like you said, Dr. Ndlovu, there are many papers written where we're coining new statements, new phrases. And it's what it means to be Zimbabwean now is totally different to what it means to be Zimbabwean 10, 20 years ago even. And part of what makes us different now is we've lost a lot of our language. And to me, that's really sad because we're muting ourselves. We're taking away our freedom of speech. And part of that is in how we communicate and the words we use, because Shona is very deep, it's expressive. And I think I appreciate it more simply because I'm immersed in another culture now.
I think the problem that we have as Zimbabweans is we lack the sense of pride in our own language. I'm just talking language right now. If you compare ourselves with other countries, you go to Angola, you know, they were colonized by the Portuguese. But look, they also have, I know they have their native language, but it's predominantly a Portuguese environment. You talk to them in English, you know, you can't really have a conversation with them. They have pride in their language. Go to France, same thing. You know, you guys are just borders with France, but you can hardly have a good conversation with the French. You know, you would rather talk to. I mean, at least if you say bonjour, you can then start a conversation going. So I think for us it's a sense of pride. I'm not too sure how we can foster that pride into the generations that are coming, but that's what I feel is the biggest problem for us.
You know, this goes back to our colonial past. It all started there. You know, because of our past as, former, colonized countries, we were made to believe everything that has to do with us, everything that is African, is backward. It's not the thing. Even when you go back to the colonial, education policies, our languages were on the periphery. They were excluded. They were only brought into the curriculum so that, certain agendas of the colonial systems were achieved. But prominence and emphasis was given to English. And that is still, strong in our minds as Africans. We have not been decolonized. We have not been re-educated. There is still need for a massive decolonization exercise, a massive, exercise of regeneration, dialogical intervention strategies where we engage each other and help each other appreciate who we are. Our challenge really has to do with that self-belief that was, destroyed in us. We lost a sense of pride in ourselves because of our past as people were once colonized.
I feel as Zimbabweans, we are not particularly proud of our languages. And for me, it's best illustrated by a story that happened to me. So when we had our first baby, she's a girl, we named her what we named her, but Anis Darit Shona Anuns Farirai. And I really loved that name. I had so much joy in my heart. As you can see, and this baby had brought me so much joy. I wanted to share it with all. I didn't think much of it. Her father had his name, Ranga Chidosa. She has that name, and Farirai is the second one. And I thought that would be easier for my family because Tango Mutifari, end of story. She goes, Mampira is Dara Rinorema Kudaro. Ndikati kurema kuita say na mai. She goes, Baba wake avaso shifarira. I have found over the years this is a prevailing theme with a lot of people. When you go to Zimbabwe, people when I introduce my children, so my first one is called Farirai, the second one is for my, and these are very profoundly Shona names as well. I should know even one of what, Mampa Mazdanore Magai. If they can learn to say Tchaikovsky, if they can learn to say Einstein, if you can learn to say Whitney, I don't get it. But there's this automatic assumption that Shona is below. That if somehow they chose the Shona name, my husband would be offended by that, and that Shona is less.
I guess for Mercedes, the problem, the father speaks to her in English. Well, I speak to her in English sometimes. The sister speaks to her in English. And she started going to school at a very early age. I mean, she started going to playgroup when she was 1 year, 3 months. So when she went there, the environment was English. The teacher is Indian. She learns with, only Indian or white kids.
The common language is English.
It's English. So
the
she
common language is English.
Picked up the English language.
Yeah. I mean, television is in English.
She watches cartoons in English.
Everything is English. No.
Our day for Shona at my school was Mswe Wednesday. And even then, the Lord's Prayer, because we used to do assembly, the Lord's Prayer, only after I was in, I think, grade 5, they decided, okay, if it's a Wednesday, Shona Day, let's do the Lord's Prayer in Shona. Up until then, they had never thought of it. Everything was in English. So in Zimbabwe particularly, I think we had this thing, Yakuti, the more English you knew, the more educated, more affluent you were. We were very colonialized. We were very much black colonialists ourselves. We like safari suits. We like colonial period stuff. We like it because I don't know why. I don't know why.
I don't know about you, but I'm really trying to talk to you in Shona sometimes.
I'm not trying.
You see?
I don't see
You see where the problem is?
I don't see a need because everything and everywhere the language is English.
Because of our colonial background, we still believe that anything that is African, is backward, is not the thing. But we are actually missing out on a lot of things, especially in our mastery of English. Because if we don't do or lay a very good foundation using the mother tongue, then it means that whatever we are building as the future for that particular child is shaky. It won't stand the test of time. Like I was sharing before this conversation, that you'll find that most of our youths are able to speak in English, but ask them to write and express themselves in written English, that manifest in a very bad way. And it is because they do not have, the requisite skills that they needed for them to transfer into English and for them to actually master English in the proper way of doing things. And thirdly, we are even saying in our curriculum, let's teach our children right from kindergarten in English. But we don't ask ourselves, are the teachers teaching these children good models of spoken and written English? So what then happens in the long run? Because these children do not have a grounding in the mother tongue, they are not acquiring English properly. 2, they are taught, the bad English, not the correct, standard, proper English. And then at the end of the day, we have a vicious cycle of, producing students whose English is questionable.
Language is learned easily, and in education, people say children learn best if they are taught in their native language. Because I want to believe that's why they've got functional templates. Hey, I don't know if there's such a word in education. It could be my own. Functional templates. A template is a way of systematizing things and learning. So the template is there, and the children just will absorb things, and their learning capacity is inexhaustible. You can't exhaust it. You can pour in as much as you wish. Aizare says what you call in computers, those things, chazara, I don't know what the hardware, memory, achizare.
The more beneficial language for a child who wants to make it in this world is either English or Chinese. Shona.
Then the British lied to us. They lied to me when I was young. They say, if you speak English, you can communicate anywhere in the world. Strange, stupid lie. It's not the situation at all. A friend of mine who did English honors like I did, he went to Yugoslavia once. He tried to speak in English. Nobody understood him. And when he was feeling very cold, his name is Willard Chiwewe. He did English honors at University of Zimbabwe with me. He went to Yugoslavia. He wanted to say, I'm feeling very cold. He spoke in English. I am feeling very cold. No response, no answer, nothing, zero. And then the man said, what shall I do? He started drawing a sheep. Could draw a sheep with wool. And then he did this, making it the sound of a sheep. looking all kinds of signs. He was used to sign language, and yet you could speak the English, the Queen's language, like an English honor student would. But shandi. English is useful, but it is very limited. Even in Africa here, it's not a majority language. Arabic is. And then there is Swahili, then it's Chirungu, and then it's Portuguese, then it's Spanish. Here, English is helpful because of the similarities in some languages. But hey, the colonial thing, it is thing, but there are certain pragmatic things that you do, or you can function in America, in other places, but go to China, go to the Eastern world. Unoshupika.
We are small. We're a small nation. And we want to make it, we want to be at par. And to be at par, we have to communicate in English.
Raising children in the diaspora presents a unique challenge for parents trying to teach children their native languages. Being Zimbabwean, I was curious to find out if other communities had the same problem. So I visited my good friend Manmeet to find out how he has managed to teach all his children their native language in a predominantly English-speaking society.
Tendai, how are you, man?
Brother, how are you doing?
How are you, man?
Thanks
so
for
good
having.
to see you, buddy.
Thank
you okay?
Thank you.
No, come in.
Thanks.
Come in.
Cheers.
You're welcome. Come in.
Happy birthday.
मैं ये बोल रहा कि कभी
जैस्मिन को आती पंजाब
लास्ट यार तुम लोगों ने नाम से बात करी है कि नहीं कभी
वाई नहीं बोली बेटा बोल ना
I completely understand where they're coming from as well, because I have a few friends who would say, actually, my child is like 1 year old and I'm not going to speak to him apart from English, because as soon as this child is going to school, I want her to be absolutely comfortable and not feel out of place. And I'm thinking, okay, but what about your own language? How are you going to teach them that? So I think it's something that we need to very consciously realize, that if you push them out of that language, they are going to lose it. You got to realize this challenge quite soon in your life. Otherwise, you might miss the boat. Because kids go faster and kids grab things faster when they're younger. So you need to grab this challenge quite quickly and do something about it. Doing something about it doesn't mean that you got to start pushing kids with a stick in your hand and stuff. As I said, my parents never did that. But it is that as a parent, it's your responsibility to make sure that they don't miss that opportunity to learn that at an age which is suitable. So I've got a 2-year-old, and amazingly, we don't talk to him in English. And I'm not worried at all about his English. He's going to go to school, he's going to pick up English in about a month, less than a month. The kids are sharp. He talks to everyone. He has this new words coming out of his mouth every day, and they are our native language. Amazing. Hilariously amazing. But he understands everything. He's trying to put effort in getting new words out. He picks up words from the elders as well. And he has picked up English words. I'm not going to say he hasn't. He has. He already picks up the English word. And yesterday he said, don't worry. And we were saying, you're like 2-year-old. What are you saying don't worry for? But the entire day he's talking to my mother, his grandmother, in our language. And he's saying, you know, Daddy, give me this or give me that. But he's speaking in our own language. He's picked up that words better and more quickly than English, which I think is important, because that's his roots there now. And all we do is just continue that by talking to him at home, you know, do that. His English is going to come 100%. He goes to school. 3 weeks later, I'm telling you, he's going to speak fluent English, because that's what kids are. But this language was important. So he's picked up. He's picked up absolutely, yeah.
It is a problem, but I wouldn't really want to blame people in the diaspora, because we don't have time. Like, it's just a busy life. It's a very fast life. As much as we want our kids to learn our native language, it's not an easy thing to teach them.
So does that mean it's not important to teach them the native language?
It is important, but it's also important to go to work and get a paycheck to look after those kids. So it's whatever we can do.
You don't really need to set aside a specific time. You can actually choose. You know, I'm going to have children. Yes, I want them to have English, but over and above English, as the starting point, they need to have their mother tongue. We can actually make sure as parents and coordinate the exercise to say that they have good proficiency levels in both languages. It just happens naturally. It's a question of attitudes. For me, it's not about time. Do you have any value that you attach to that particular language. Because as it is, why they are not investing so much. If today, as the world were to wake up and say, Ndebele is now one of the languages, you will see how we are going to all try and, ensure that our children learn Ndebele at whatever cost. So I think it's a question of people asking themselves, what is in for me if my child learns Ndebele? It's the value that they attach to these languages. It's not a question of time. Because really, if they have time to speak to these children in English, they certainly have time to speak to them in Ndebele. So it's a question of attitudes and the value attached to the language.
So if you want the child to learn the language, you are really serious about it, don't even talk about time. Do you see the child? Do you interact with the child? Speak. Don't even think about it. Don't even say, na, 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 ne, ne, ne. That's stupid baby talk. Talk the way you want the child to speak. They will speak it without any accent. Guarantee you, that's what happens.
If she was to go and study out of the country, even if she was to be a lawyer or, come back to Zimbabwe, you always, whatever job you have, you always
But there are no disadvantages because the generation that still values Shona and only speaks Shona won't be there by the time they come back.
I mean, we're talking of what, like with messages.
We
that's
probably won't be there.
25 years' time?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
we won't be there.
By that time, the whole generation will be wiped
That
out.
generation that is holding on to Shona as the traditional language and with pride will not be there.
I regret now not learning Shona. I regret it, and I remember my train of thought at the time thinking, why would I want to do Shona at the time? And then I picked history, geography, and literature. And I want to say chirungu, why I didn't do that in my own language, I don't know. But we were taught to hate it. We were taught to hate it. We were taught to feel like it's not as important as everyone else. This is why most people are given names. And for some weird reason, Richirungu is the one that used to be used at school. And people would forget your Shona name. So, for me, like I keep saying, it's an emotional subject. I feel like my identity has been stripped, but I'm more aware of it now, having lived in the diaspora.
So if you appreciate that the world that you are living in values, a generation that is multilingual, and if you have this appreciation that the mother tongue is the best foundation for second language acquisition, you will never go wrong. And you certainly appreciate why it is important to teach your child the mother tongue.
Probably doing anything extra, just do it natural. Just as I said, it's really helped me to be natural. I am naturally a Hindi or a Punjabi speaker. And when I'm doing that at home, I'm not doing anything special or anything out of the ordinary, which means that my kids realize that my dad is not trying to push anything on me. He actually speaks that language.
Let me tell you something. The people in the diaspora, if you really want your children to learn your language, all you have to do, my friends, just speak to those people in your language. Matopedza. Don't go to any school. They will absorb it. They will take it in the way that you speak it. With your intonations, with your inflections, zvese zvamunoita zvinobuda zviri zvazviri izvozvo. Itangano ne ingotaura kuluma kupela kuzazipfumela. That's it. No books, no textbooks, no hassles, no tassels. You just speak the language and the child will take it and speak it exactly as you give it to them.
Every moment matters.